Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another episode of Leadership for the Now. My name is Florin Lungo, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today, I'm joined by my teaching partner, Alena Ipanova. Hi, Alena.
Hi, Florin. Nice to be here. It's been 2 weeks since the last
Exactly.
show.
Exactly. It feels like it's not often enough, but sometimes this time really flies. And so I'm glad we're back in with another topic. So we're gonna talk
Yes,
about
and it's
communication, right?
exciting topic. Yes, very exciting topic, communication.
Absolutely. And I like maybe to start about with kind of I like a quote by John Maxwell. He was asked at one point in a conference by someone like, John, what's one thing that I need to know about leadership? And he said, you know what's the one thing you need to know about leadership? Is that there are more things that you need to know about leadership. There's not only one thing you need to know about leadership. And as leaders, we have many things on our agenda and we have many responsibilities. But what we have found is that communication is kind of the structure that you put all of those things on. So if you think about vision casting, if you think about motivating your team, goal achievement, everything has to do in some way touches on communication, right?
Yes, fully agree with that. And it's communication. I would also add that it's much more than just words that we say. It's the energy that we bring to the room. It's our body language, it's our facial expressions, how we read the room, how we sense the state of people in the room. So all of that is complex. Yet, I think when we are on a journey to develop those skills, we feel immediately the effect of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this morning I had a seminar here in Gothenburg about collaboration. We're giving this example of a team of, so we're part of different teams, right? And some teams are, I'll say established. So you're part of a team and you're going to be part of that team for a long period of time. But they're also fluid teams. So in other words, we give an example of a surgery team that comes together for a period of time to perform a procedure, and then they go to their position in their hospitals. They don't work together, right, a lot. And in those moments, think about someone doing surgery on you.
Mm.
Like, you want them to clearly communicate what they need, when they need it, right, what to do. We don't want any miscommunication there, right? So maybe not every day of our lives is like a surgery on someone. Is not life and death, right? But still, communication could be the difference between success and failure. Could be the difference between your team hanging along and working well together and achieving the goals, or not, right?
Yes, yes, this is a very good example actually, to emphasize the importance of having a good communication. And, on the trainings that I do, I ask this question: what is one top thing in any teamwork or in any leader that you would appreciate the most, or you think that it's the most important component? And usually the highest percentage of people answer communication. But then the interesting thing starts when we discuss what they mean exactly by communication, because we have this one word and the concept is it's broad. So I wonder here at this point, what do you think, Florin? What are those main components of communication? Maybe top three components, or maybe
Yeah.
more components that you would actually define as crucial.
Yeah, so if we take actually the act of communicating, and this is an important, I like to share kind of a principle which for me was not easy to wrap my head around, just because it says that the responsibility for the communication lies in the side of the communicator. So in other words, I can't just say like you don't understand me, because I might not communicating the way you understand me. I cannot blame my team. I cannot blame my audience. I cannot blame the public for not getting me. I really need to take all the blame, right? So when we look at that act of transmitting a message, right? if you think about communication at the basis is transmitting a message, there are three components in that. There is the tone of voice, there is the body language, and then there is the words that you use to communicate a message. Right? So if we just think about these three, I think we share on other episodes that only 7% accounts for the words we say. Right? So
Yes,
there's
yes.
much more than just the words. And if you are a technical individual, like I used to be an engineer, and for me, communication was very straightforward. I would rely a lot on the words that I would say, and I would expect other people to communicate the same way, right? I would be very direct, like almost like my view was like, if you give a system the same command twice, it will give you the same output. And I was surprised, like why are people reacting differently to the same stimuli? Why the same message that I'm sending out is actually perceived differently by different people? So that was kind of where I started. I was really unaware of these aspects of communication.
I really like this that you define these components, and I would add here that it's our limbic brain, right? Emotional brain that reacts to the tone of voice, and we already give some interpretation to what we are going to hear. And as I'm specializing in intercultural competence, it's very interesting because across cultures we also use different tonalities. And you shared an example as well that you used higher tone of voice in talking to people in a team, for instance, or people interpret it differently if what they used to was really, you tone down and you speak quietly and calmly without those speeches. So this is also something to pay attention to that might be culture dependent, or our experiences, the environment where we used to work, where we were growing up, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why, um, another component we share on another episode is about emotional intelligence and empathy, and being able to kind of read those emotions. And you're absolutely right. What we have found is that most of the time we make decisions emotionally, and then we use logic to explain and back up those decisions. So in other words, people will not, like, let's say you work in sales, right? And you want to, convey the message that your product is or service is what your customer needs, right? The customer will not make a decision based on the words you use and the logic and the kind of the logical case you build, right? They'll probably make a decision based on what they feel, and if they're getting, and usually in sales communication, it's the transference of emotion from the seller to the buyer. In other words, we have to give them confidence in three things: in us, like in the individual, I'm going to be here around, so I need to convey that message; in the product that I'm providing to them; and in the company that I'm representing, that this company is going to be around, and when you need customer service, there is people answering the phone and helping you. So in any interaction, there someone tries to influence someone else. And if you're a leader, of course you want to influence your team, right? To be on this new idea, or to contribute to this goal, or to collaborate, or whatever it is that you want your team to do. So, I mean, this is, maybe it's a long answer, but you're absolutely right, because we sense the emotion first, and then we rationalize the words. That's why the words only count for 7% of the communication.
Yeah, and with the examples that you're sharing here, I'm also thinking about the role of the context. Because when we talk about communication, and for instance, the team decided that clear communication or effective communication is our top priority, and it might be so that everyone in a team understands it differently. We just use the same word for it, that yes, we agreed to have an effective communication, and then some misunderstandings, some conflicts happening on the way. So here, I think the role of a context is very important. For example, as you gave an example about surgery, what kind of communication should be there? What do we need to have in order for us to succeed? If we talk about engineering team that develops a product, then we also need to discuss what are those components of communication that we need in this context in order for us to be successful, to work together successfully. In sales team, it's going to be a different story. So here, I want to link it to cognitive flexibility as well, that we need to really adjust. We need to develop that muscle to be able to adjust our communication style, not to be direct and straightforward all the time. And if you allow me to share one concept from
Sure.
cultural intelligence as well, we talk about direct communication and indirect communication that might be also culture dependent, that we might grew up not only national culture. Those who are following our shows, they know that we belong as individuals to so many different cultures. So in our family, for instance, we might use very high context communication, like for example, I can say to my husband, "Oh, it's time to have a walk with the dog." So I don't give any direction. So what does this message imply? Do you want your husband to go for a walk with the dog? Do you want to do it yourself? So it's an example of high context meaning. And people who got used to very direct communication, when you say what you mean, they might not be able to decode this message. And then we feel like, okay, but I told you, why don't you do that? So distinguishing and knowing what's your dominant communication style in different contexts as well, when you send your message across, when you're in a conflict, when you want to say no, it's very important. So it comes to self-awareness again. How well do we
Yeah,
know ourselves?
absolutely. And it reminds me of a situation where people use the word someone. Someone has to do it, or we need to do this. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering, like who is we, right? Or this needs to be done. What do you mean by that? Is going to be done by itself, or do I need to do it? You're going to do it? Like, what's right? Who's someone, right? I have not met someone. And so sometimes in some leadership styles, the leader, if the leader is using such a language, it's almost like inviting volunteers, right? So it's almost like inviting the team and expecting that someone will take initiative. And as you say, in a very directive context, or for someone coming from a direct culture, they might just wait to be pointed at, like, you, Alena, should do it, or you, Florin, should do it, right? And I think
Mm,
that's where the cultural aspects comes into play, and we want to be mindful of that. We want to be aware of that.
yes.
So what would we like if we will give leaders some tips? I think I have a really nice concept that I share with leaders when I work with them one on one, and this is about creating. John Maxwell calls this idea of communication. And in order for us to communicate effectively, we need to connect with the audience. We need to connect with the
Mm,
individual, and this kind of connection happens on common ground. And I think leaders need to look at finding this common ground, finding what do we have in common, because many times we discuss this in other shows as well, we tend to categorize people, and we
mm,
even in diversity and inclusion, we work a lot with stereotypes because we put people in boxes, right? And this is actually saying that you know we are different. Like, the message that it's sent across the table is, we are different. Now, when it comes to communication, we really need to figure out what do we have in common. And
mm,
when I discuss this with leaders, I advise them, very three simple questions, right? So these are three questions that I believe every leader should ask their team members. If not daily, that might be a little bit too much, but at least in every couple of days. And the first of them is like, how are you doing today? Like, just just kind of checking in, like looking at those unconscious signals, like just making sure that people are seen, that they get the message that I care about you, I see you, I want to know how you're doing. And just by asking that kind of question, and if you get kind of, I'm okay, that shouldn't be satisfying for you, because I'm okay, it's not I'm okay, right? Now again, you mentioned about the tone of voice, so maybe for that person they really are okay, and that's the way they express they're okay. But you as a leader, you want to really make sure that they are really okay, and if there's something that there is happening in their life that you don't know about, you may want to ask some questions. The second question will be, what are you working on? Like, as leaders, many times we're not connected to the day-to-day activities. We don't know exactly what each of our team members are working on, and this will help us understand kind of and see that they work on the priorities that we gave them. And then kind of the third question is, how can I help? Like, if you would have a leader that on a regular basis, it's interested in how you're doing, what you're working on, how is that work going, and if they can help with anything, that would be a leader that you would appreciate, isn't it?
Yeah, I like these questions, and actually, it reminds me of several companies I've been talking to and collaborating with, that they have. I believe many companies practice this stand-up meetings where they
Mm-hmm.
actually address these questions for the team, and people in the team share that. And this one more thing that I found fascinating, just for spending 5 minutes to add to these questions that you shared, and ask some question which is more like socially related, or the question that might allow you to learn a little bit more about each other, to get to know each other better. And in one company, they had this tradition for team members to write down some questions, and they took turns with that, the questions that they would like to discuss. And there were different things, like from what's your favorite type of coffee to have in the morning, until if you had $1 million, what would you spend it on, and things like that, or what would be your ideal destination, or the job that you would have if not this one. So discussing these type of things in the frame of these questions as well, I believe, can really empower people to learn more about each other, create stronger bonds. And as you speak about the connection, so this is something that can make this connection stronger, I believe.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, one of the questions that we usually take up with leaders, in let's say someone leads a team, and they're, I'm for one reason or the other, we talk about one of their employees, and we get to discuss about what motivates this individual, like why do they show up at work. And many times leaders do not know that, and they start guessing. And one of the questions that we could add to the list that you share and I share is, how did you spend your weekend? Like, leaders make the assumption that people come into the office to contribute to the company's goals, that they feel so proud about working for this company that they're just do it even if you don't pay them. And that's wishful thinking. People come to work because they want to finance their private life. They want to finance their goals. Like, if you would stop paying people, you're gonna see how many of them show up. But when you ask about how did they spend the weekend, that tells you about their interest. That tells them, if they talk about, I've been out with my family, and like you share with me that you spent, last weekend that way, and you've been in the mountains and doing something interesting, then I know family is important for you, right? And I know if I want to give you a new opportunity that might mean that you would have to work more, that you might not feel that that's an opportunity. You might feel that I cannot take this, and you don't understand that's not important at this stage of my life. My family is most important. Or they share about their hobbies, like they're building boats or bikes or going out in the nature. And these things actually allow us to connect with people, allow us to find that common ground and to see what do we have in common. And when I have a communication with Alena, I made a mental note that she mentioned she spent time with her family. So now I might want to ask, how is the family going, right? How are things going at home, right? And or someone has a newborn in the family, someone has an event in the family. And so when we're talking about communication, and especially here, like, okay, there's two aspects. If you're a leader, then probably you're going to have to speak in front of a big enough audience at one point, right? You maybe have to cast vision, do something. But I think when leaders look at communication, they're giving more importance to this aspect, public speaking or speaking in front of an audience, and they don't consider that much these day-to-day interactions with their teams and how my communication styles come across in the team, and how do I connect with this individual better, and how do I make sure that I don't exclude anyone in my language or in my communication. Does it make sense?
Yes, these are good points. And I think that it would be probably good to give something more practical for the leaders. For instance, if we have a leader who is committed to start intentionally working on their communication. So what would be 2, 3 most important components, in your opinion, to start with?
Yeah. So I think the easiest answer that I can give, and also it's the most practical, is to take a communication assessment. Now we have an assessment that we develop at Maxwell Leadership, but there are other assessments on the market that will be helping you to take the subjective opinion out of the equation. So this assessment help you understand how you communicate, what are your strengths, what is important to you, how this might be perceived by other people on the team. And then that's when you kind of start working on your communication, because depending on your role, your communication style, and what the team needs from you, your communication plan would look differently. So let's say if someone is really good at communicating in front of an audience, very persuading, but they're a poor listener when they are one-on-one, then for them, maybe listening would be one of the things that they should be looking at, right? So I don't know if you use assessments, but in my work, I have found that assessments are a great way to help leaders identify where do they need to work on. And I think here there's a thing that I think assessment kind of are one way that I would advise. But then if you look at for a more practical and more general valuable, I'll say advice, then the one thing that helped me a lot was to record myself and watch myself communicate. So now you might not be able to do that with your team, but you might be able to do it like now, or have a Zoom call, have a Teams meeting with your team, and just record that. Just say, "Oh, I'm going to record this, so we're going to be able to refer back to it later." And I think there was a moment in my life where I was comfortable in watching me speak. But many people are not comfortable because they all my voice sounds this way, or here is what I do with my hands, and like that's probably one of the best things that you could do. So if you want to get better at communicating, get some feedback somehow on how do you communicate, and then look at your body language. Ask yourself, like, when you're communicating and you transmitting that message, what does your body language, your facial expression, your hands and your body says? Do that matches the message that you're sending or not? Right?
I like this method.
Yeah.
I think it's really this is also something that I use for myself, and we can use this show, right? It is recorded to watch and to analyze. Yes, and I think it's totally okay to feel uncomfortable when you watch yourself, and then you just identify those growth points in communication. And I would add to your advice to use assessment. I would add also seek for feedback. If it's mainly the context for your communication is team communication, then seek for feedback in your team to get a sense of how your messages come across. What do you need to improve? What are the things that your team appreciates? And to have this feedback and conversations, you need to have psychological safety. You need to have this open space, create space for people to share and to take in their feedback as well. And I would also add some specific aspects to start from when we talk about communication, because this is one of the biggest challenges when people try to define, I'm going to work on my communication skills, I'm going to speak to more people, or I'm going to do this and that. You mentioned active listening. So I think this is something that defines the success of our communication as well, how well we are able to listen. And I do believe that maybe not all people grasp the whole concept of active listening. And usually the interpretation is that it's about focusing on the other person, what they say, their body language. So just keeping focused.
Yeah.
And this would be the second level of listening, actually, focused listening. The first level, when you just hear, you listen to reply.
Yeah.
So, and then you might have your own thoughts, which is also, you can relate to that. Oh, I've experienced the same. Oh, it reminded me of that story or this story. So you have this kind of self-talk while you are
Yeah.
listening, and it takes effort to keep yourself focused. And then there is third level of listening, which is actually what we want to have in our communication. It's global listening, when you pay attention not only to the person, body language, what they say, but also to the environment, to the energy. And to give an example of that, for instance, you are to give a feedback to one of your team members, and you know, like, you're using the best possible model, feedback model, like SBI, situation behavior impact, and you're going there to deliver your feedback. But then it's not just about delivering your message. You might check in with this person, you might sense that, okay, something is off. Is it the right time for us to have this conversation? When is a good time for you? So this type of listening, and also being comfortable with silence, I think that it's worth starting with, generally just self-assessing and seeing how well I'm able to listen to other people. So that would be the practical tip from me that I really encourage all leaders to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And also think there are some barriers that we usually, we put up, and that stop us in really connecting with other people and
Mm,
communicating clearly. Uh, Sometimes assumption, it's a barrier, right? So I'm assuming that I know what you're gonna say, so I'm not even, letting you finish your sentence, or maybe I'm not even listening, as you mentioned. I'm just waiting for you to stop so I can reply, right? So if we assume that we know what, and also assuming that we know what people want, assuming that people want to be communicated the same way we want to be communicated to. So this, I mean, we know there is this word about assumptions, right? So you don't
mm,
want to assume, you want to ask questions, right? If you have doubts. Then there is arrogance, right? In other words, well, I know better about this subject. I don't even need to know your opinion, right? And some leaders and some people that are in charge might think that way. So this is again a barrier. I'm not asking you because you might not have an opinion on this, or I'm indifferent. Indifference, it's again another barrier where people are indifferent to what we think. Like they know, I know well, but not everyone in this team knows about this subject. So let's not let's not include everyone. Let's not, because I'm indifferent. I don't really care about what you're going to have to say. And sometimes it's also, I'm in control. So by not sharing what I know about the topic, then I'm kind of keeping control. I'm not allowing you to actually know what I know, because I might not know
Mm.
what I think I know. And the moment I speak, you're going to figure out that I don't know everything. So sometimes, just having a barrier on communication, not sharing the things that we should be sharing with others, right? Keeps us under control, or we keep control. But this, it's a hinder in communication. So sometimes I see these coming up. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have availability, like leaders being available for their teams and answering questions, if these are, um, you have, again, listening, you have questions, right? If I'm curious about you, then I'm going to ask some questions about you. And usually we go with the acronym FOR, family, occupation, recreation. So usually when I want to find out more about you, I'm going to ask you about these three areas. So these are things that, humility, again, that helps us connect with people, helps us, build that communication bridge, rather than putting a barrier, between us and them.
When while you were sharing, I got some ideas also about that we also, as individuals, we have different ways to connect. And I just recently I ran a training for 60 people, and there were a couple of people who shared that we don't like to speak about personal things. We feel like you can push us back if you start asking about family and this and that, because in their nature they are more task oriented. So at work
Hmm.
they're more focused at work. They have their boundaries. So with all of that, I think it could be also one of the things to actually discuss with the team. uh, what is the best way for you to connect with others? How would you like to how are you connecting with people?
Yeah.
And there are some tools for that as well. I'm using Team Pass, and you include different types of questions. And it's incredible when you have it for all the team members. When you have a new member entering the team,
Hmm.
and this member can do the same thing, so they all already learn something about each other, about their preferred ways to communicate, to receive feedback, give feedback, what others misinterpret about them. So all of that creates a good setup for communication when there is the context and there is clarity within this context. So I think we just need to uh, try being more adventurous with that, and it's joyful. The process is joyful, and it's not about working with communication only when you have a problem, right? So
Yeah.
it's important to be proactive. We always have things to improve. So just adding a little bit of fun and excitement, adventure to the leadership journey, to the team journey, could serve all of us well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think we cover a lot, and we're, again, like, we were over
Overtime,
the
no.
30 minutes time, like, kind of, that's our target, but we consistently go over, which means that we have a lot of things to share. I hope, our viewers get value out of the conversation. I think one of the last ideas that came to mind right now is that, as a matter of fact, we have a board game. It's called the Leadership Communication Game. So this is like
Mm,
a game that plays with cards. Each of these cards have statements on, and some cards are about debate. So we take a side and we kind of try to build a case for this and that. Others have, statements that we discuss in the team. And I forgot about this, because this is something that we use with teams, but I just forgot.
mm.
It's really, I mean,
It's
there
a
are
good
so many
tool.
tools out there that you could actually use. And this is a wonderful way to kind of lower barriers. Like people, when we come in as consultants, we might be perceived as, well, they come to analyze, what we're doing wrong, and then, they're going to prescribe a training or whatever they're going to do. But when you play a game, people take it more fun and they say, oh, this is just a game, right? But it's a really good diagnostic tool to see where do we have
Mm.
the problems in communication. But because it plays as a game, people don't take it really really serious, and they don't put the guards up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
again,
It
um,
relaxes.
exactly. So it creates that kind of environment where they're more natural rather than putting on a mask or trying to convey another image or another side of that.
Mm.
Right
Yeah,
on.
thank you for sharing this idea as well. I love everything
Uh,
in relation to board games.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm thinking that maybe at one point in the future, I'm going to offer some online sessions of that, just kind of a trial for people to look at. But I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about communication. And if any of you watching want to try one of our assessments, just feel free to reach out to Alena or me, and we'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. So we're gonna see you again in 2 weeks' time, right?
Yes, and we are gonna get better with our time management, huh?
Like, I'm not, are you committed to
Should
that?
it be the next topic?
Yeah, time management, the priorities. All right, but if you have any suggestions for, I mean, I'm talking to anyone watching, if they have suggestions on topics that they want us to cover, then just drop those in the comments. When we go to the comments at the end of the show, and we're gonna address all that. So thank you for tuning in. If you missed this, you just write summary in the comments. We're gonna send the summary to you, and we look forward to see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.